Hello, everybody. All right, I know we've had some dark conversations this morning. This is going to be dark as well, a little bit, but with some, I think, positive elements to it as well. My name is Ken Singer. Full disclosure, I am not in fashion. So I am a technologist. I'm an innovationist, someone who studies how new ideas can create new value. And I was invited here to talk about how that might create new value for you in the retail industry. To prepare for this, because I was quite nervous, I talked to a colleague back home, Tommaso, who's quite funny, Italian guy, and I said, hey, how do I make most of this time in Italy? I'm a little nervous, I'm not in retail. He said, okay, two things, Ken. One, be prepared to be the worst dressed person in the room. And looking around, I think he was exactly right about that. And he said also, make sure you use your hands when you talk, otherwise they won't be able to understand you. So I'm going to be as animated as I possibly can in this presentation to make sure that I'm standing between you and lunch. So I'll make this interesting. All right, so I come from here. So in the Silicon Valley, UC Berkeley, one of the universities there. And you might recognize this, because it is a copy of this. Actually true. The guy who was commissioned to build our campanile came to Venice years prior and was inspired to create this on our campus. Weirdly, technically ours is older because they had to rebuild this one, so strange. But it is a testament to how we tend to copy everything that comes out of Italy. So when there's some fashion or architecture, the rest of the world pays attention, which is why I think it's an important conversation to have about innovation. So I've been at this conference for the last 2 days, and I've been asking myself the question, what is sustainability? Because on our campus, sustainability is about the environment, right? It's just almost completely connected. But as a former entrepreneur, for me, sustainability has always been financial. How do I survive? How do I make money, right? How do I keep the lights on? And so the question becomes, how do we think about sustainability in the times of great instability? And we've been hearing all day, and yesterday as well, words that are associated with change, right? Climate change. And these are all examples of change, actually. We've talked about transitions, we've talked about evolution, regeneration. These are words of change. And that's because change is the new black. We are living in an era of change. And I know someone used the word disruption. A disruption is a change that you did not prepare for, okay? And if you feel you've been disrupted, it means you did not do your job in anticipating something that's coming at your business. Now, change usually starts with a sudden external shift. And we've heard this word shift before, but I'm going to use this very specifically. There are 5 major kinds of shifts that we study that we think that triggers a series of changes. And almost every innovation that you've seen in the world, if you look underneath, there was a shift that happened prior to it happening. So here are environmental shifts. See this storm that came through. The people who lost their homes, they're the losers. But the people behind them now have million-dollar views that they did nothing to earn, and they suddenly won. This is the thing about shifts. There will be winners and losers when these shifts occur. Here's another shift, technology shift. Without GPS or mobile smartphones, Uber could not exist. Now, it's not a causation. It doesn't mean that the shift causes Uber, but the shift allows for Uber to exist. Okay? And the winners from that would be the rideshare, the losers would be the taxis. Then there's legal shift, which yesterday was a conversation about, right? And GDPR is a great example of this, where you have regulation that comes in and it creates new winners and new losers, right? The winners are always the consulting firms. Full disclosure, I'm also a consultant. But we tend to win here, and so do the lawyers. The losers are the non-compliant companies. And that would be you if you're not part of this process to create the policies. You will end up becoming the victims of these policies. Another kind of shift that we look at are social cultural shifts. Gen Z influencer culture, led by, I think, Kim Kardashian, she's come up more times in the last 2 days than the word Trump, which I have to say is refreshing but really sad at the same time. But this cultural shift, the winners are the influencers, but the brands are the losers. The brands no longer control the conversation with consumers. The influencers are now mediating that. And I don't know if the brands fully understand what that's going to do to their business. Then there's market shifts. Amazon became this marketplace, and over time, because they were charging so much to sell stuff on Amazon, people were trying to create their own e-commerce stores. And this is what created Shopify. Shopify is a multi-billion-dollar company that helps just average companies create their own e-commerce stores. Now, the winners, of course, are new brands and established brands, but the losers are these marketplaces. So which shift made Ryanair possible? Raise your hand if you've flown Ryanair. I guarantee you if you've flown in the last 10 years, you've flown Ryanair. Because if you're on a Lufthansa flight, you're paying for peanuts. If you're flying on Air France, you're paying for baggage. Ryanair has forced every airline to behave like Ryanair. So whether you know it or not, you are having the Ryanair experience, no matter what airline you're flying. That's the impact of these shifts. Now, this was a regulatory shift. You can fly a Ryanair flight from Malaga to Torino, which you could not do 20 years ago because it's an Irish airline. You used to have to fly through Dublin in order to get to your location. So what this allowed, all of this complete competition within Europe, but look at what happened to all the established airlines. They all struggled because they did not anticipate this shift. This was going to completely destroy their business model. I think you guys have reinvented your airline here. I'm not sure what it's called now, ITA or something, in Italy, right? Alitalia was hit hard by this. This could be the future of fashion if fashion does not anticipate these shifts and adjust to the realities, because we cannot necessarily control these shifts that come. So how is this relevant to your industries? Now, again, I'm not a fashion person, but I have some thoughts here. You've experienced a massive shift already. The one that was created by COVID. It broke our supply chains, and we've talked a lot about supply chains here today. Italy and Portugal, interestingly, I think, are becoming the new China in this. I know I have good authority to say I've seen fashion companies move their production to Italy and to Portugal. My brother is a fashion designer who did that move. They actually moved their production here, and they pulled it out from China. So this shift, this chaos that COVID created and the uncertainty in China has shifted the supply chain story. People were looking for alternatives. And if you were smart and paying attention to the shift, you could have captured some of that looking. People were looking to move. Okay? And then we had a rep from Shen. So I commend you for inviting them, by the way. That is, I think, a testament to what you can learn from other business models and people that you might think are too competitive with you. But I think a lot of what they said, just so much information there, was hidden. There was one word that I heard him use more than anyone, I think I haven't heard it at all until that moment, was the word demand. Heard the word supply over and over in the last 2 days, but not about demand. On demand is getting closer and closer to people who have the money, right? And so the secondary shift after COVID, as factories, as industry were leaving China, they weren't leaving the business, they were leaving factories and trained workers who are now becoming competitors. Those 5,000 factories they were talking about, the West trained those people. We trained all these people who are now needing jobs, right, needing a career, and they're now competing with the brands that train them. So these are the things that happen when shifts occur, is that we create unintended consequences. Here's another shift to pay attention to. 15 million Americans are on Ozempic or some version of this. which means they're no longer going to fit in their clothes. 15 million people going out and buying a whole new wardrobe, right? And that's only growing, right? I think something like 40% of Americans have type 2 diabetes, right? So imagine those kinds of shifts that can have an effect on your business. So what kind of effect will this technology shift have on you? Okay, this one I study a lot because I come from the engineering department at Berkeley. This one's scary for us because we don't know what kind of shifts, secondary shifts this is going to have across all of our lives. But one of the things we know, because my brother is a designer, and he does the basic beginning design and then spends hours using Photoshop to make it look like how it would drape on a person. He is now using AI to take his original design and within seconds create not only this first prototype, but as many as he wants with different patterns, different colors, and this is instantaneous. The design time scale has gone from maybe weeks down to days. And anyone in design school, anyone who knows Photoshop can use these tools now, okay? So what this has done, I think, is turned fast fashion into fast couture, which means the pedestrian, everyday person can design something. And if you are an influencer with 1 million viewers, if you have 1 million followers, you can have your own fashion line, and that's already happening. I'm sure you've heard of some of these companies that are popping up that allow you to do this, and Shen is also doing this. They'll probably be one of the major winners in this, but it could be the beginning of the disintermediation of the brands. And I'm sure, I don't think many of the brands are here today, which is probably won't get as much pushback on that, but there is now a challenge as to who owns the customer. Used to be the brands, but the influencers, that's a major shift. If you don't think that, look at what's happening in American politics, how so many of the politicians are meeting publicly with influencers in order to get people's votes, okay? So this is what's coming, and so what I would suggest is maybe taking a look at this supply chain question and inverting it, and think of it in terms of a demand chain. What if you could imagine the end customer and work backwards? I was joking with someone, I said, as I'm listening to everyone talk about the supply chain and the brands and being dependent on the brands, it sounded like the suppliers were driving a very expensive car with blindfolds on and being told by the brands when to turn left and when to turn right. They don't know, they have no visibility other than what the brands are telling them. If I were operating a business that way, it would freak me out. I can see why people are concerned because you are reliant on information from someone else. And what I see from Shen is that they're using data to tell them what to do. They're not waiting for the information to flow back in a supply chain. They're going instant. And that is going to be the competitive advantage that is going to make the difference. If you can stay in front of that, I think you will do well. So this is my last slide. So standing still is not sustainable. I think that's my general message. We can't keep what we have because the world is changing, and we can't change that. It is constantly coming at you. So my suggestion is you've got to pay attention to these shifts, and you have to innovate. Innovation seems to be the only way forward to progress. And shifts are inevitable and uncontrollable except for regulatory shifts. You can be part of the regulatory design process. It seems like if you can collectively do it, you'll be powerful. But that is one thing you actually can have some influence on. Innovating is a hedge against potential shifts. That's why you should always have a group working on something new. Shift management is risk management, because I guarantee you there will be another shift coming along, and you must innovate to be sustainable in these great times of change. Thank you.